Are shotgun barrels all the same? Surely it's just a smooth round hole designed to take a cartridge of the correct caliber. In basic terms, yes. But every time a gun company tells us their latest smooth round hole is the best, I'm 50% curious and 100% skeptical. After conveying my thoughts on this to one of the world's biggest gun makers, they invited me over to find out whether barrel tech is important or whether a barrel is indeed just a barrel.
And there's no better place to come in the world than Gardoni Valtrompia.
Little did I know that I would get to see the full process of R&D.
The reflection I've seen thousands and thousands of times suddenly makes a lot more sense.
Be involved in the manufacturing process.
Don't move, don't touch.
Do some of the testing myself. And get to shoot with two of the greatest shooters in the world.
You've won the Nationals a few times, and you're a lovely guy as well.
First stop, Gardoni Valtrompia.
Taking this right back to basics, what are the components here that we're looking at?
We have the monoblock, which holds obviously the chamber. And then the first part obviously is what we call the forcing cone. Here is the standard Steelium barrels, so 80mm forcing cone.
The forcing cone is the part of the barrel that forces the charge from the width of the chamber down to the width of the barrel. Modifying these has been a popular shotgun upgrade since the dawn of breech loaders.
Then we got the cylindrical part, and at the very end we got the chokes. Here at Beretta we truly think that our barrel technology is the best. And by meaning that obviously we have a certain segmentation. On our Silver Pigeon model we got the standard profile. On the 694 we got the Steelium Plus profile, and then on the TD11, which is our best in line, we got obviously the Steelium front.
What makes them different is the length of the forcing cone. Steelium is 80mm or just over 3 inches, Steelium Plus is 320mm or just over 12 inches, and the longest forcing cone is on the Steelium Pro at 450mm, just over 17.5 inches.
So when we look at the DT11 here, this blue paint indicates the length of the forcing cone.
Exactly.
It's the whole barrel.
Basically, yes.
Is there any disadvantage?
Not really, not that we have found of, and that's why we keep on exploring new possibilities with forcing cones and bore diameters and so on, and chokes obviously, but we truly think that is the way to improve.
This kind of statement is the very reason I am here, and I couldn't wait for that afternoon when I would have the chance to see the science behind the marketing. Before we dive any deeper, it's probably wise to go back to basics and look at barrels and how they're actually made. To my left is all the hammer forging, and to my right, all the machining and where they are joined together. Here is a quick explanation of how it works. To build a barrel, you start with a specially selected steel bar. After the pieces are cut, they have a blind hole drilled inside, and the outside is machined to diameter. Billet is put into this chamber to be vacuum stress relieved. This process relieves any work-induced stress without changing the structure of the steel. This removes the possibility of dimensional instability during subsequent processes. The barrel is then polished internally by this machine. Lights and the human eye are used in barrel making across the world. It's because the human eye can spot straightness. If you put your tube into the light, just align it until you see the perfect elliptical shadow and twist, you'll soon see very quickly any imperfections, any rivels, and any lack of straightness. A quick bit of quality control, and from here the bars go into hammer forging, where they're beaten and stretched to become a more familiar barrel shape. It's at this stage that they're given one of the internal bore profiles we saw earlier. Now this is being hammer forged, it is a barrel tube for a shotgun. They lock it into this vise, or place it into this vise that has two bearings either side. There's a light in the distance that gives you a shadow with 2 white lines either side. It's set in here, they spin it, and if those 2 lines stay in the same place, that's a straight barrel.
The barrel tubes are then sent next door. Honestly, the mixture of machines and people across this process is pretty amazing.
At this point, the tubes are welded into the monoblock, welded at the tip, and it's the first time we're not going to be looking for a parallel line reflection. Every barrel on these high-end guns is manually regulated with a system that is top secret, and I can't show you, to be convergent at 30 meters top barrel and bottom barrel. And that's how you make good barrels that shoot in the right place. Unfortunately, that process of hand regulating and hand converging the barrels is labor intensive, time consuming, and takes a lot of skill. So it's reserved for the top end Berettas. This is a barrel from a silver pigeon. It comes from the hammer forging plant dead straight. What they then look to do is unstraighten it, a controlled deformation, so that both tubes, when they sit together, converge, and will converge within tolerance at 30 meters. Once they're together, they're obviously batch tested, but it's a lot of a quicker process. It is still done by eye, by hand, by very talented individuals.
From here, ribs are placed on double barrels and gas ports are placed on autos, ready to be permanently joined in this fiery tunnel.
In front of me are 2 racks of 694 barrels about to go into the furnace of doom to be brazed together forever. You know, maybe I did say a barrel's a barrel's a barrel. Turns out a barrel's not a barrel's not a barrel.
These joined tubes go next door and have any excess material polished off by hand.
After the polishing, they're put into this series of machines that cut all of these holes, extractor slots, loops, machine all these faces to get them absolutely perfect before they finally go into the internal barrel honing. That just polishes the internal surface. After honing, it's just like looking down a shotgun barrel. The reflection I've seen thousands and thousands of times suddenly makes a lot more sense.
Almost done, the barrels just need to be protected both on the outside and the inside of the bores.
So behind me is 10,000 litres of chrome plating liquid. Barrels are put onto here in batches of 3 tubes, so that can be an over and under and a semi or 3 semi-automatic barrels. The barrels are then deposited into the liquid for an hour. There's an anode up the inside that transmits electricity just to the centre of the barrel, and so that makes chrome stick to the internal bore. Once the barrels are taken out, any excess is struck off before they go into the blacking tanks, just there.
All that's left is final polish, exterior surface treatment, final inspection, barrel proofing, and a barrel is born. Obviously, I had a ton of whats, whys, and whens for the team in charge.
Why did they start chroming bores?
Oh, let's say that chromium is a fabulous metal that realize several characteristics inside the barrels. It's mandatory in our field to have high corrosion resistance, wear resistance. These are 2 main factors to produce as much as possible a long life for the barrel, and also the ability to resist to the outside environment, so to resist against rust, against maybe poor maintenance.
So they're only putting in a few microns of chrome,
Yes,
it's not a thick surface.
Yes, depending by the product, something between 4 to 20 microns. This depending a lot from the kind of, let's say, goal we want to reach. For example, military field, for sure we want to have the most demanding results in terms of long life, and also for the kind of ammunition they use, the bullet instead of the pellets. So this is a very demanding,
A higher wear rate.
yes.
And that chrome would last forever in a shotgun barrel?
The chromium can last, let's say, as long as several generations.
For us consumers, this is great news. If you buy a shotgun now, its barrels should be fit for your grandchildren to use. As good as the product is, there are some issues. The hexavalent chromium plating process uses substances that are toxic, carcinogenic, and all round nasty to work with and difficult to dispose of. As such, the current process is being phased out by the EU with a deadline of September 2024, and a new way of protecting barrels must be found.
There's no existing available industrial solution to replace the chromium as it is. We have a supplier that help us to realize this surface finishing, that is the DSC, through a specific technology that is the PECVD technology.
PECVD stands for Plasma Enhanced Chemical Vapor Deposition. It's a process used to deposit thin films from a gas state to a solid state on a substrate at relatively low temperatures. In this case, using plasma to cover the inside of a barrel with DLC.
DSC, that is a chemical compound based on carbon.
It's a diamond-like carbon.
Exactly, this is the name of DLC, is acronym of diamond-like carbon. That is a compromise between the graphite and the diamond. So with this specific chemicals, we are able to reach, let's say, 99% of the characteristic we are able to guarantee with the chromium.
But without carcinogens.
This is the trick.
It's good news.
Yes, good news, but it required a lot of investment in research.
As you might expect, getting a uniform surface coating on the inside of a tapered cylinder is quite difficult. And then to achieve this on an industrial scale is another kettle of fish. These guys have been building barrels for 500 years though, so this isn't their first challenge. I was interested to know how and why they decided to go down this route with barrels, so I took a quick stop at the Beretta Private Museum to learn more from Jarno, a fountain of knowledge on everything Beretta.
Jarno, we've spent this morning looking around at all of the modern Beretta tech, the Steelium range of barrels, but you guys have been making barrels since 1526. Can you tell us a bit of that story?
It turns out that 500 years ago, the first Beretta barrels started life as many individual steel plates. Each plate was beaten around a mandrel and then each piece was threaded together.
And that's why in many cases you see barrels that go from octagonal, hexagonal to round, or have these complex fluting pieces here. So you can see on these barrels some great examples.
The problem with making one long tube out of many small tubes is that you're left with multiple weak points along its length. So unless the quality was perfect, these early barrels had a tendency to blow up.
This is one of the reasons why the Republic of Venice established a proof house since the 1500.
Wow. Yeah. Post this time of wrapping a ribbon of metal around a mandrel and making them into short sections, screwing together and forging, came Damascus. The joining of many tiny twisted bands into a bigger band, building a barrel continually as it went. Obviously, mechanization and advances in technology helped this greatly. But with that came beautiful patterns, the etching that came with them, the refinement that came, and the understanding that you could create whatever pattern in Damascus you wanted within reason. And then the browning that came after that, because suddenly a shiny Damascus gun wasn't great for hunting, so browning was developed until fluid fluoresced steel came into play.
Shortly after that, in the early 1900s, Beretta introduced the monoblock barrel construction system.
That is the case of taking one main block where your chambers sit and sleeving your tubes in, which at the time really was a revolutionary idea. Most gun makers now make their barrels in this way.
This tech developed a little bit over the 20th century, but had its real revolution when these advances in forcing cone technology came into the game. Over the other side of the factory, I was then lucky enough to meet Fausto, who's worked on the Steelium project right from the beginning, and with the aid of a translator, he took me through the reasons that it came to be in the first place. Surprisingly to me, one of the reasons was optimizing guns' performance with steel shot. A few decades ago, most countries across the world stopped using lead for duck shooting, and they soon found that steel shot cartridges were kickier than the lead shells, and because the steel shot was less malleable than lead, it responded badly to the traditional short forcing cones and short chokes. As they designed a barrel tube to reduce recoil and enhance patterns with steel, they discovered that this would also improve performance with lead ammunition. This is just one small part of a very fascinating story of how they got to where they are today.
When they develop a over and under competition gun, a new model or new barrel profile, they put 20,000 rounds of test ammunition through it.
Nowadays, the first stage of all gun testing here at Beretta is in a computer simulation. a simulation that starts with creating a randomly generated virtual shot charge that will be sent down a virtual bore.
This approach allows us to change the shot material, the shot size, the shot number, and the pressure which acts on the wad.
So you could simulate a specific cartridge.
Yeah.
Not only a specific cartridge, but a potential cartridge to research what the optimum load specifications are for a specific barrel profile. This virtual cartridge is then fired down a virtual bore to simulate the pressure on the steel, how the steel is therefore affected, the deformation on the pellets, and then the spread as they exit the tube.
How long have you been running these simulations?
This kind of simulation requires a very powerful hardware. In this moment, 1960 CPU server is available since 2020. So, in my opinion, we are only at the beginning of this kind of study, of this kind of investigation.
As computing power grows, so do the possibilities for this sort of testing, and who knows where it will lead them in the future. I for one would love the chance to play with this software and simulate all kinds of dumb barrel theories. But with the level of training required to run that software correctly, it'll have to wait.
Our goal is to test a virtual barrel before manufacture it, to predict the barrel behavior, the barrel mechanical behavior, and also the shock cloud.
Of course, these virtual tests mean nothing without real-life data. And before we headed to the testing tunnels to scrutinize the Steelium marketing, I got a quick look at another almost top-secret test.
What is this?
So this is an instrumented barrel. This is basically a barrel that we instrumented via strain gauges, which are sensors that are capable of measuring the strain of barrel while it's being shot. We normally see the barrels as a sturdy piece of steel, not deforming, not flexing. But in reality, during shooting and when the pellets and the wad are traveling through the barrel is expanding, is flexing. What we wanted to do here was to measure the increase of diameter of the barrel while we were shooting.
All of these tests have been done on a computer first, and you're just double checking that the theory matches the practice.
Exactly.
We're talking, what, a few microns of swelling?
Yes, we're talking very little percentage of deformation and strain applied to the barrel.
And that's instantaneously returning back to its original state?
It's deforming basically instantaneously. Then the return to original shape depends on the type of steel, the shape, the geometry of the steel itself. Not that you've seen the barrel vibrating well after you shot. It occurs so fast that you won't even notice.
So it turns out the steel used for barrels needs to be perfect in order to maximize barrel life after potentially hundreds of thousands of these micro swellings, and to optimize performance throughout its life. That's the sort of thing I find amazing, but that's enough theory. Time to see if all of this has real-world results.
What are we doing here today?
So today you are going to experience what it's like to be in the R&D team for Beretta.
This test wasn't so much about my perception when shooting the guns, it was far more scientific than that.
So what we prepared for you today is a couple of experiments and tests that we perform basically almost daily for the development and consequential control during the production and the lifespan of a product. Mm-hmm. In this case, we have the three representatives of the profiles. So you will be able to experience the difference between the three profiles all at once.
We had a recoil sensor that gave us a 3D readout indicating the quantity and distribution of the kick.
Oh yeah, that is...
It's a three-dimensional representation.
Very easy for an idiot to understand.
Exactly.
I would have to wear a shoulder pad both to give this gun a repeatable surface to recoil against and to make sure I didn't crease it and break it.
And that is pretty expensive.
We're talking quite a lot of zeros, a lot of responsibility.
It was insanely expensive.
In my mind, I'm now thinking, you could use this to get perfect gun fit, to get perfect translation to your shoulder.
Yes.
If you really, really, really cared.
They had a high-speed camera to capture images of the shot 3 meters from the muzzle.
So we're going to be running this at 15,000 frames a second
Yes.
today?
It can reach up to 1 million.
This would show us the consistency of the patterns, and apparently if they're not right at 3 meters, they're unlikely to have magically improved at 30. This was twinned with a massive light to ensure the slow motion footage was visible.
Watch your eyes.
Oh, that's nice.
This is very bright.
And finally, down the end of the tunnel was a system for measuring terminal energy.
They tried to convince us to use the yellow pages. We wanted to do something that could be used extensively, and as you can see, we use it quite a lot.
When the shot hits it, it moves back.
The results of which were fascinating and a little too secret for me to share on the internet. The final step was making sure I was shooting straight past the sensor that triggered the camera.
Tell me when it's okay for you.
Yeah, we're good.
All right.
I was not supposed to rest my gun on this, but just use it as a guide.
It's a lot of money in this room.
Quite a lot. That is the most expensive.
No doubt.
That is the second one.
No.
Yes. It looks cheap, but it's not.
The first gun on test was a Silver Pigeon 1, which uses a standard Steelium barrel. For consistency, each gun will be fitted with a half choke
Should be fine, yes.
and be shooting a 28-gram steel cartridge.
Go ahead. Nice.
What are you looking at there?
Now, what we're looking at here is the general shape of the pellets flying, and if there is like a tail in the shape, how it's open, how it's the density, as you can see right here.
Is this good? Is this bad? Are we happy?
Good or bad really depends on the shooter. Some shooters tend to love having a tail. Some other shooters prefer to have a wider pattern, so they have like a disc flying down range, covering a whole surface.
It's just about what the shooter wants from their shot cloud.
Exactly.
You can get that performance by tuning your barrel and cartridge.
Yes. Want to try something else?
Let's shoot the next one.
Let's go.
Next up was the 694 with Steelium Plus barrels. I was genuinely excited to see if there was a difference.
Nice.
Steelium Plus.
There it is.
I mean, that is instantaneously better off of a metric of 1, which is obviously not real science.
That to you looks better, right?
It looks more like I'd expect.
Yes. Very tight density of pellets.
From your experience, the shot pattern from that first shot from Steelium is what you'd expect.
Yes, I expect something with less tail and a higher density of pellets.
That is a shocking difference from one piece of data.
When we do this kind of tests, of course, we do not take one test. We do several tests.
Well, that was interesting, but we're not done yet. Time for the top of the line Steelium Pro.
Finally, the DT11 Black, Steelium Pro.
Go ahead. Nice.
Eagerly, we awaited the results.
There we go. Here it is.
Okay.
The middle is Steelium Pro, the top is Steelium Plus, and the bottom is Steelium. You can clearly see a difference.
Absolutely no. We have the other two recordings right here. As you can see, this was the Steelium Plus,
which suddenly looked not as good as it looked 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, this is the advantage, the ability to have this kind of equipment. We're able to see the difference that maybe sometimes the shooter tend to tell us, I feel this better, I think the downrange is better, but what do you mean by better? With this kind of equipment, we are able to actually see that.
In fact, their top secret data file, containing data from hundreds and hundreds of shots, showed consistent improvements in recoil, patterns, and terminal pattern energy as you went up the range.
Honestly, from a personal perspective, I always thought it was just marketing.
It's not. On the basis, it's not.
It's
the
shocking.
difference is, it's there, the difference.
Call me fickle, but I was suddenly very tempted by any Steelium Pro barreled gun. The final results to check was the recoil.
This kind of 3D visualization really gives you a direct sensation of the difference and how much is the difference, as you can see. But if we want to see the peaks of the three, these are the peaks.
You got a harsh peak there, but that's again probably because I shouldered it slightly different, but the average is significantly lower than this.
Yeah.
But it's amazing that Steelium Pro is, in all the tests, another level. It's not seemingly level 1, level 2, level 3, it's more like level 1, level 2, level 4. That's Steelium Pro in both of the tests we've seen.
You can really see the difference.
As well as the top secret stuff, it's clearly shockingly better.
It's surprising how much better it is compared to the other two.
What will be interesting is, in real life use, how much that translates.
Joining me for the first stint of real life use was two men who have used their Berettas to great effect. winning multiple world and national events between them. They are Mr. Anthony Matarese Jr. and Mr. Zach Keinbaum. And I was looking forward to asking whether they actually thought these barrels helped them in their achievements.
Anthony, you have many world championships under your belt, as well as US Open titles. How much of that do you put down to the barrel technology that you have? Does it matter? Does it make a difference?
Yeah, for me, it's the barrel's incredible. I believe it has the best patterns of any gun out there, and the recoil is definitely minimal. It's a big thing for me. I've shot a semi-auto for years, and moving to the over and under, you know, I was looking for a gun that didn't kick a lot.
Is it as much a confidence boost as it is an actual technical boost?
It's technical. I mean, obviously, if you believe in your equipment, that's going to help your confidence, but it has to start technical. You know, to be honest with you, when I first heard about the Steelium and the Steelium Pro, and that it was going to have, you know, the longer tapered bore and, you know, better and improved patterns and less recoils, you know, I was skeptical because it sounds like a lot of hype. And then when you pull the trigger, the gun kicks less. It's noticeable, and if you start with something noticeable and real, then you can build real confidence within that.
And you've noticed a difference from moving from Steelium to Steelium Pro in the consistency and quality of your brakes?
Yeah, I mean, the gun has, you know, incredible downrange patterns. You know, I never shoot tighter than a modified. With a quality shell and Steelium Pro barrel, you know, you can hit targets at any range with a modified choke, just because I think there's that much less deformity of your shot given the performance of the barrel.
And you will never change chokes off of a modified?
I will put in a skeet choke occasionally on something, you know, 25 yards with small window or something like that, 20 yards with a small window. But in general, I shoot modified both barrels and use that 95% of the time.
Would you go back?
Actually, the last barrel I shot would have been a 723 bore back in a long time ago, and the brakes in this gun are way better than the older technology. So no, I'm definitely going to stick with the Steelium Pro.
Yeah, he is sponsored by Beretta, but a man like him could get his hands on any gun sponsorship in the world. If he didn't like it, he wouldn't be shooting it. I've always gone on the theory that if it's good enough for someone like him, it's plenty good enough for someone like me. Next, it was time to do the good old-fashioned how does it feel test, or as it's properly called, a shooter perception test.
Zach, I have shot one of these many times. I've shot one of those many times, but I've never shot them side by side. I've done the tests in Italy. I'd like us both to shoot the Steelium Standard and a Steelium Pro at some relatively soft rabbits and just see if we can see a difference.
Let's do it.
Because the science says there is,
Right.
but I've never shot them side by side. Have you?
I have not.
After you.
Oh!
You've shot that, as we've said, 250,000 times, so you should know what that feels like.
It's a gun I recommend to students all the time. The first over and under my parents ever bought me was a 680 series Beretta. It's tried and true. It's been around for a long, long time.
44 years.
Incredible action.
Almost unbreakable. How does it feel recoil-wise is really the thing next to this. Kick more, kick differently?
It kicks maybe slightly more, but just a different, not a bad recoil, nothing that's taking you off the target as you fire. It's an awesome gun. It really is.
I'm looking forward to this. First, I get to shoot your gun.
There we go.
This might make me more talented. You never know.
Oh. What do you think?
You know what you're getting.
Definitely.
Some of the other premium guns vary a lot. The DT11 is pretty consistent.
Obviously, stock fit is huge, but
very healthy.
As long as it's close, I mean, it's a gun anyone can shoot.
All right, let's move, not even down a grade. It is down a grade, isn't it? It's hard to say.
It is.
Because there's nothing wrong with one of these.
Dead pair.
It's definitely a sharper thing. You feel that cartridge going off much faster.
I feel with the Steelium Pro that initial spike in pressure is just minimalized by, it feels like 15 to 20% less spike in that initial jab of recoil.
I'd go even less, like how I perceive it. How you hold the gun, how you swing the gun, all of those things will affect how you feel recoil, as well as gun fit being quite important in all this as well, right?
Absolutely.
We've all felt guns that shouldn't kick, that beat the hell out of you because they've got a stock for,
no question,
not you. As much as I admire this gun, I'm going to go put it down and grab a DT11.
Let's do it.
Zach, talented shooters obviously have talent. That's why you're a champion. And us average people just enjoy shooting for what it is.
Right.
How much of your achievements and how much of your talent and ability do you actually put down to the technology that you have in your hand?
That's an excellent question. You don't get to be sponsored by Beretta without being already a talented shooter and have quite a resume. But my career, once I took hold of the DT11, really took off. The ability to really, those couple extra targets per weekend that it takes to win at the highest level, I really didn't have until the DT11. 9 years ago when I got it. It's hard to describe. It really is hard to describe. But I think the better patterns, the confidence in just the dependability and using it over and over really took me to that next level. I started winning major championships once I got the DT11, and it has made a difference.
And winning and losing a major championship is done on 3 or 4%, right?
It could be 1-2 targets.
So if 1 or 2 targets extra, you rely on that 1 or 2 targets extra. It's not just a gimmick.
Correct. I teach some of the better younger shooters, but even adults in the United States, and we've moved them from other brands into the DT11, and you watch their scores immediately take off. Part of it's gun fit, but part of it's just the performance of the gun. There's no question. There's no question. You have to take some of the other brands and spend a lot of money in extra barrel work to get anywhere near what this gun will do right out of the box.
Having seen the genuine millions and millions of euros they're throwing into the development of this,
right,
it's got to be worth it. Like, it's not just, well, let's paint it green and charge.
It is definitely not smoke and mirrors, although with lots of things in our industry, it can be.
There's more people in Beretta's R&D team than there is in many other gun factories I've been to.
Absolutely.
That in itself is wild.
It truly is. People have to see it. In some of your videos, it really shows.
It's real.
It's a real thing.
It's real. Like, yeah. They're not mucking around.
Right.
This is a real thing. These are the practice dads at the World English Sporting event at EJ Churchill, so they're pretty soft. Doesn't mean we can't miss them though, right?
Let's see what we got.
All right, A-Bird.
A-Bird, pull.
You shoot a 32-inch.
32-inch.
Do you think it makes much of a difference?
I don't think there's any real ballistic difference, but it's just a little more weight out towards the front of the gun. I'm a big guy. And
You're much more handsome than in pictures, by the way. Really are.
I appreciate that. But I'm a big guy, and some of those longer targets that we're going to see at major sporting competitions, I like the smooth move of that slightly heavier barrel.
And what chokes do you run?
I run a lot of 20 thousandths modified, half.
Yeah, that's it.
I've shot other brands, other guns in the past. I used to have to choke them to 25 thousandths, 30 thousandths at times to get what I get out of 20 thousandths. When I first got this gun, I would shoot a lot of 25 thousandths, and it's like a laser out there. It's literally like shooting a baseball at some of these targets. I've been able to open up that choke a little bit and hold that consistent pattern out there past 60, 70 yards. Anywhere from an improved cylinder to an improved modified. It's really those middle constrictions, it really shines. I feel like with 20 thousandths half choke, I feel like at 20 yards it opens enough to be very viable and then kind of holds that pattern.
Well, that was an honor. But I wasn't done with this gun yet.
This really has been an amazing journey, and I thought just to finish it off, I'd come here to Barbary with a DT11 31-inch Sport. I just wanted to give it a go on some slightly bigger targets. I mean, I've shot one of these before fairly extensively, but knowing what I know now, I have a greater appreciation for it, right? It's like liking nice wine and understanding nice wine. Both involve wine. So I just shot that stand with some 1500 feet per second ounce loads. And well, I was thinking back to shooting with Zach on those targets with the Single Pigeon 5 and this. And this isn't a derogatory comment against the Single Pigeon 5 because it is inherently a great gun, but The increase in muzzle flip more than the recoil is what you feel. I felt that recoil on my face more than I did in my shoulder. And this, the recoil in your face is next to none by comparison. It really is bits like that those boys were saying, little bits to help them find extra targets or two. With a pair like this, or a pair like some of the ones we've shot today, it's quite easy with a fast pair with that recoil to get your head off the stock. With this, when you pull the trigger, your face just stays exactly where it was. And on a quick pair, that is invaluable. Just been down to the shop and got some plastic wad cartridges. I've shot this course with the Fireboard 6.5s, and I mean, they did fantastically. And these barrels are designed for fiber or plastic, but because I'm here, I want to see what they're doing with some plastic. And I've got special dispensation to use plastic wads outside of a competition environment here, which is good because we don't break the rules here at TGS. Marta, you were kind enough to guide us around the Beretta factory on our first visit and then our second visit when we learned all about barrels. And honestly, I told you I was skeptical. I really, really was.
Yeah.
You work in their marketing department, and most companies' marketing departments, in my mind, just kind of make up a message and put it out there.
Actually, we're at marketing, we're not allowed to say anything that is not proven by the R&D department and our engineers. So it's been very tough sometimes to communicate things, but when we say something, it's because it's been proven and tested. It's 500 years family and company doing barrels since then, so yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks to you.
And thank you for coming along on this journey. I was hoping to discover a load of hype, but turns out I have to eat humble pie once again. Better barrels are better.
Thank you for watching, guys. This channel is made possible by our amazing sponsors. You can find out more about them in the description down below. And if you want to support the channel, you can join as a member. You get loads of extra content, well, some extra content, and occasionally we hook up and go clay shooting together as a membership group. If you don't feel like joining today, we really appreciate you watching and subscribing. Have a wonderful day.